I sat on my bed, staring at the old photograph of Jessica. She was smiling, her eyes bright, with a joy that felt like sunshine on a cold day. But that was before everything changed before the accident. It had been a few weeks since she died, and the weight of her absence pressed down on me like a heavy shroud. Jessica and I were inseparable during high school, sharing laughter and dreams, but I had never told her how I truly felt. Now, it was too late. The night of the accident replayed in my mind like a haunting film reel. The image of her lying motionless in the street seared into my memory. I had been at a party, unaware that she was out there, crossing the road on her way to meet me. As I sat in my room, the phone rang. It was Sarah, our mutual friend, her voice shaky. "Can we talk? It's about Jessica." "Of course. I'll be right over." When I arrived at Sarah's house, I found her pacing the living room, her hands trembling. "I can't stop thinking about what happened that night. It doesn't feel right. We owe it to Jessica to figure out what really happened." "What do you mean?" I asked, frowning. "I heard some things. People are saying it was an accident, but I don't believe it. There's more to this story." Sarah had always been intuitive, and her words sent a shiver down my spine. "What do you want to do?" "I think we need to visit the cemetery. Maybe we can connect with her spirit, understand what really happened." Despite my apprehension, I agreed. We headed to the cemetery under the pale glow of the moon. The air was thick with tension, and an eerie stillness enveloped us as we walked through the rows of headstones. When we reached Jessica's grave, I felt a wave of grief wash over me. Sarah lit a candle, and we knelt beside the grave. "Jessica, we're here for you," she whispered. "Please, if you can hear us, let us know what really happened." As we spoke, I felt a chill in the air. The candle flickered, and I swore I saw a shadow dart behind a nearby tree. My heart raced, but I pushed the fear aside, focusing on Jessica. Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper. "Help me," I gasped, glancing at Sarah, who looked equally startled. "Did you hear that?" She nodded, her face pale. "We need to go, now." We scrambled to our feet and fled the cemetery, the whisper echoing in my mind. I didn't know if it was Jessica reaching out or just my imagination, but it felt real. In the days that followed Jessica's death, a heavy feeling hung over our small town. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over everything, and I couldn't shake off the whispers that haunted me or the unresolved emotions bubbling inside me. Jessica had been more than just a friend. She had been a bright light in our lives, and her sudden absence left a void that felt impossible to fill. I decided to talk to Sarah, my closest friend, who shared my feelings of confusion and sorrow. We often spent long nights discussing our fears and doubts, but this time felt different. Together, we made a plan to learn more about Jessica's tragic accident. We couldn't let her memory fade away without understanding what really happened that night. We started our investigation by heading to the local library, where we spent hours sifting through old newspapers. Our fingers scrolled over the faded pages, searching for any articles related to Jessica's death. As we pieced together the story of that fateful night, we stumbled upon something shocking. Jessica hadn't just been crossing the street, she had been caught in a street race that had gone horribly wrong. "Why didn't we know this before?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. The more we uncovered, the angrier I became. How could the town keep this a secret? "It's been buried," Sarah replied, shaking her head. "People don't want to face the truth. It's easier to forget than to accept what really happened." Determined to uncover the full story, we decided to interview anyone who might have been involved or witnessed the events leading to Jessica's death. We spoke to classmates, neighbors, and even some of the local shop owners. Each conversation brought us closer to the truth, but it also deepened our sorrow. It was hard to hear how people spoke about Jessica as if she were just another statistic, someone who faded away without a trace. During one of these interviews, we heard about Tom Henderson, a local troublemaker known for his reckless behavior. Everyone had a story about him. Some said he was a thrill seeker, while others called him a fool. He had been spotted in the area that night, driving a flashy car that matched the description of the vehicle that struck Jessica. Our hearts raced as we learned more about him. As we dug deeper, we discovered that Tom had a group of friends who often encouraged his dangerous stunts. They would push him to go faster and take bigger risks, cheering him on like he was some sort of hero. It made my blood boil. How could they think this was okay? Jessica's life had been lost, and they were just playing games. With this new information, we decided it was time to confront Tom. It was a risky move, but we needed answers. I knew that facing him would bring up a lot of emotions, but we couldn't back down now. When we found Tom at a diner one evening, he was sitting in a booth, surrounded by friends who were laughing and joking as if nothing had happened. The sight made my stomach turn. Did he even care about what he had done? As we walked over, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I was ready to stand up for Jessica, even if it meant facing this reckless guy. "Tom, we need to talk," I said, trying to sound strong and steady, though my hands trembled slightly. He looked up, his eyes narrowing as he recognized us. "What do you want?" His voice was sharp, like he was annoyed by our presence. "About Jessica," I said, my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. "We know you were there that night. We know you were racing." His face hardened at my words, and for a moment, I thought he might deny it outright. "I don't know what you're talking about," he snapped, but the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his confidence. "Stop lying," Sarah shot back, her voice fierce and unwavering. "You were racing, and she got caught in the middle. You left her there to die." The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of our accusation hanging in the air. Tom's expression shifted, revealing a flicker of guilt that made my heart race. "It was an accident. I swear. We were just having fun. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." His voice was pleading now, and it felt like he was trying to convince himself as much as us. "But she did get hurt, Tom," I pressed, my anger turning into a desperate need for justice. "You have to face what you did. You can't just walk away from this." Tom's bravado began to crumble. I saw the fear in his eyes, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. "I can't go to jail. It was just a stupid mistake." His voice cracked, revealing the panic inside. "Stupid mistakes have consequences," Sarah replied firmly, her tone unyielding. "You need to tell the truth. You owe it to Jessica and to everyone who loved her. You can't just pretend this didn't happen." Tom looked around at his friends, who had fallen silent, their laughter replaced by tension. They had been cheering him on, but now the weight of reality was crashing down. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he mumbled, looking down at the table, shame washing over his face. "That's not enough," I said softly, trying to reach the part of him that still cared. "You need to take responsibility. It's time to stop running away from the truth." The diner felt heavy with the weight of our words. It was no longer just about a reckless driver, it was about a life lost, and we were not going to let Jessica be forgotten. As Tom finally looked up, I hoped we could break through his walls and find a way to make things right. After our confrontation with Tom, a storm of emotions swirled inside me. I felt both angry and deeply sad. We had faced him, but he refused to take responsibility for what happened. That night, as I lay in bed, The shadows seemed to stretch longer, and the silence felt heavier. I shut my eyes, wishing for sleep, but the whispers returned soft, yet persistent. "Help me." I bolted upright in bed, my heart racing. Those words echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, and I knew we had to go back to the cemetery. We needed to reach Jessica one last time to make sure her spirit knew we were trying to help her. The next evening, Sarah and I returned to the cemetery, our hands full of candles and flowers. The cemetery was quiet, the moonlight casting long shadows across the gravestones, making them look eerie and ghostly. As we approached Jessica's grave, a wave of sadness washed over me. I knelt down, trying to gather my thoughts as I lit the candles, their flames flickering in the gentle breeze. But even in that moment, I felt a heavy sense of foreboding settle around us. "Jessica, we're here again," I whispered, my voice trembling. "We want to help you. If you can hear us, please give us a sign." Just then, the wind picked up, sending a chill racing down my spine. The candles flickered violently, as if trying to warn us. I felt a presence surround us, cold and unnerving. "Help me," the voice whispered again, louder this time, echoing in my ears, sending shivers through my body. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice quaking with fear. "Yes," Sarah replied, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. "What do you want from us?" In that moment, the air grew even colder, and I could see my breath misting in the night. A figure appeared before us, Jessica. She looked translucent, shimmering in the moonlight. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, and I could see the pain etched on her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice like a haunting melody. "You must find the truth." I felt a rush of emotions, grief, regret, and an overwhelming urge to protect her. "We will, Jessica. We promise. We'll find out what really happened." As she faded away, I felt her presence lingering, urging us to continue our search. We had to finish what we started. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah and I returned to Tom. We needed him to confess and face the consequences of his actions. "Tom," I said, trying to sound calm, but urgency seeped into my voice. "We know you were racing that night, and we know you left her behind. You need to tell the police the truth." His expression twisted in anger, and he slammed his fist on the table. "I won't go to jail for something that was an accident." "It wasn't an accident for Jessica," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "She's gone because of you. You need to make this right." For a moment, Tom looked taken aback, and I saw a flicker of remorse flash in his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he mumbled, looking down at the table as shame washed over him. Sarah leaned forward, her voice softening. "You have to face what you did, Tom. It's the only way to honor Jessica's memory. She deserves that much." After a long pause, he finally nodded, his shoulders sagging. "Fine, I'll go to the police, but I'm scared." Hearing him say that made a wave of relief wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the closure we needed. That night, I returned home feeling lighter than I had in days. I closed my eyes and fell into a deep sleep, the shadows in my room no longer feeling suffocating. But that sense of peace didn't last long. The next morning, I received a call from Sarah. "You need to come over. It's about Tom." When I arrived, she looked pale and shaken, her eyes wide with fear. "He didn't go to the police. He's gone." "What do you mean?" I asked, confusion settling in like a thick fog. "He died last night in a car accident," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They said he crashed while trying to escape the guilt." A chill ran down my spine, and disbelief washed over me. "What does this mean?" I think it's connected to Jessica, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe she's seeking revenge. In the days that followed, the atmosphere felt heavy with dark energy. Tom's death hung over us like a thick cloud, a constant reminder of the consequences of our actions. I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica was still with us, her spirit restless, desperately seeking closure. As we mourned Tom's passing, I began to realize that the weight of this tragedy extended beyond him. I found myself haunted by the events of that night, the racing, the reckless abandon, and the heartbreaking loss of 2 young lives. The guilt gnawed at me, making it hard to focus on anything else. One evening, as Sarah and I sat together in my living room, the TV droning on in the background, I brought up the idea of returning to the cemetery. I think we need to connect with Jessica again, I said, feeling a mix of fear and determination. We owe her that much. Sarah hesitated, biting her lip. Do you really think it'll help? What if something bad happens? We can't keep ignoring this, I replied, my voice steady. We need answers. We need to find a way to move on. After a long moment, she nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. The next night, we returned to the cemetery, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. The air was thick with tension, and as we knelt at Jessica's grave, the shadows seemed to dance around us, almost alive. Jessica, I called softly, my heart pounding in my chest. We're here for you. We're sorry for everything that happened. We want to help you. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if our words had reached her, the temperature dropped dramatically. The wind howled through the trees, rattling the branches like ghosts whispering in the night. Suddenly, the ground beneath us trembled, and Jessica appeared again, her form more defined than before. Thank you for trying, she said, her voice echoing in the stillness. But it's not just about the truth. You must learn to forgive yourselves. Tears streamed down my face as I took in her words. How can we forgive ourselves? We couldn't save you. Forgiveness is a path to healing, she replied, her expression serene and calm. You can't change the past, but you can honor my memory by living fully. Don't let fear control you. With those final words, she began to fade into the darkness, leaving behind a sense of peace that filled the air around us. I felt a shift in my heart, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. In the weeks that followed, Sarah and I leaned on each other for support. We attended support groups, shared our stories, and slowly began to heal. The pain of loss still lingered, but it was accompanied by a newfound understanding of forgiveness. As time passed, I realized that Jessica's spirit hadn't vanished. It lived on in the memories we shared, in our laughter, and in the lessons we learned from her. She had shown us the importance of living life to the fullest, free from fear and regret. One day, while visiting her grave, I knelt down and placed fresh flowers at her headstone. Thank you, Jessica, I whispered, my heart swelling with gratitude. I promise to live for you. The air was warm, and for the first time since her death, I felt a flicker of hope. I knew that Jessica would always be a part of my life, guiding me through the shadows and into the light. As I walked away from the cemetery, I felt a gentle breeze against my skin, a soft whisper in the wind. I'm still here, it seemed to say, and I smiled, knowing that Jessica's spirit would always be with me, encouraging me to live fully and fearlessly. Days turned into weeks, and I began to notice changes in my life. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping others find their paths and overcome their challenges. Every time I shared my story, I felt Jessica's presence beside me, reminding me of the importance of connection and compassion. Sarah and I became closer, supporting each other through the ups and downs. We shared laughs and tears, creating new memories to honor Jessica's legacy. One night, as we sat together under the stars, Sarah turned to me, her eyes bright with excitement. "You know," she said, "I think we should do something special for Jessica, something to celebrate her life." I nodded, feeling the same spark of inspiration. "What if we organize a memorial event? We could invite friends and family, share stories, and raise awareness about reckless driving." Sarah's face lit up. "That's a great idea. We can even create a scholarship in her name to help other young people learn about safe driving." With renewed energy, we set to work planning the event. We spent weeks gathering stories, creating flyers, and spreading the word. The day of the memorial arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. As we stood together, surrounded by friends, family, and community members, I felt a surge of emotions. Jessica's spirit seemed to fill the space, wrapping us all in love and warmth. We shared stories of laughter and joy, of adventures and dreams, and as the sun set, we lit candles in her memory. In that moment, I knew we had honored Jessica the way she deserved. The pain of loss would never fully fade, but we had transformed it into something beautiful, a celebration of life and love. As the night wore on, I stood with Sarah, watching the candles flicker in the darkness. "I think we did it," I said softly, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "Yeah," Sarah replied, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I can feel her with us." The air felt lighter, and I knew that Jessica's spirit had finally found peace. We had fulfilled our promise to her, and in doing so, we had also begun to heal ourselves. From that day on, I carried Jessica's memory with me, not as a haunting reminder of loss, but as a source of strength and inspiration. I learned to live fully, embracing every moment, and to help others in their journeys as well. In the years that followed, I found joy in the simple things, laughter with friends, moments of kindness, and the beauty of life itself. Jessica had shown me the way, guiding me through the darkness and into the light. And as I continued on my journey, I knew that Jessica would always be a part of me, reminding me to live, love, and forgive no matter what.